Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Say what? Say what? Say what? One more time.
We commence the proceedings with our signature segment, Say What? That's when we roll out an assembly line of wacky, astonishing, damnable, and ultimately revealing things uttered by politicians and the chattering class. She is back. But for how long? Hillary Clinton continued the mental meltdown that overtook her after suffering the most infamous defeat in American history with unhinged conspiracy theories, while speculation somehow swirls that she's actually considering running for president again. Hillary went on a podcast this week and made some accusations that left even her friends shaking their heads and wondering whether she simply lost her grip, especially when it comes to the Russians.
I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of, sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far. That's assuming Jill Stein will give it up, which she might not, because she's also a Russian asset.
Jill Stein? You mean the obscure Green Party candidate who sued for a recount after the 2016 election trying to help Hillary? But now she's a Russian asset, okay? And Tulsi Gabbard, combat veteran who opposes our involvement in Syria and thus must be a Russian asset, of course she is. Those jaw-dropping remarks suddenly elevated the below-the-radar campaign of Tulsi Gabbard to the front page, especially after Tulsi struck back hard.
People warned me in 2016 that my endorsement of Bernie Sanders would be the end of my quote-unquote political career. They said Clinton will never forget that she and her rich and powerful friends, her allies in politics and in the media, will make sure that you are destroyed. But if they can falsely portray me as a traitor, then they can do it to anyone. And in fact, that's exactly the message that they want to get across to you. That if you stand up against Hillary and the party power brokers, if you stand up to the rich and powerful elite and the war machine, they will destroy you and discredit your message.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, huh? But even as she considers entering the 2020 race in the belief that none of the current Democratic candidates can beat Trump, Hillary has blamed everyone but herself for her stunning defeat in 2016, including the email scandal which broke loose after she deleted more than 30,000 emails subpoenaed by Congress. And now she's got the media feeling guilty about it all, including the notorious Trump basher on CNN, the once respectable Jeffrey Toobin.
This is also a story about the news media, about how much time we spent on that. And that's something that I have felt a great deal of personal responsibility for, because I talked about the emails here in CNN. I wrote about it in the New Yorker. And I think I paid too much attention to them. And I regret that. And I think I hope a lesson is learned. I mean, this story turns out to be, you paraphrase, I'm paraphrasing too, a big nothing. And we spent months on it. Hillary Clinton very likely lost the election because of it.
A mea culpa from the media. It's our fault Hillary lost. We should have just buried the Hillary email scandal because it helped Trump win. That, my friends, is CNN circa 2019. Now, speaking of presidential election losers, how about the newly minted senator from Utah, Mitt Romney, so disfigured by jealousy that he lost and Trump won, just like the late John McCain, loser to Obama the first time in 2008. Romney felt compelled to make a grandiose speech on the Senate floor attacking his own president.
The decision to abandon the Kurds violates one of our most sacred duties. It strikes at American honor. What we have done to the Kurds will stand as a blood stain in the annals of American history.
You know, you wonder if Romney has even spoken with any ordinary Americans who care a lot more about the American troops standing in the way of an invading army than Kurds they know nothing about. But Romney was made to look really bad when Trump announced what he called a permanent ceasefire in the region, while admitting the word permanent is a relative term in that tinderbox region of the world. But Mitt was made to look even worse, or even a laughingstock, after an enterprising reporter discovered that Romney has a secret identity on Twitter, which became great fodder for late-night comics like Jimmy Fallon.
Mitt Romney has been using a secret Twitter account where he supported himself and criticized President Trump, and goes by the name, this is real, Pierre Delecto. What? Wow. Pierre Delecto. Sounds like an evil chef at Au Bon Pain. You know, Romney's been running the account since 2011. Yep, Pierre Delecto is 8 years old and loves Twitter. He's just like the president.
Yeah, and Romney thinks he should be the president, to the point that he's willing to attack a president of his own party while his political enemies try to remove that president from office. Talk about a useful idiot. Idiotic enough to think the GOP will take his side against Trump, and idiotic enough to think the American people side with him and the Washington uniparty war machine. And the latest thing Trump said that has Democrats all hot and bothered, enraged as usual, was the president saying he was the victim of a lynching by impeachment-hungry Democrats. They say that word can only be used by black people. But going back to Joe Biden at the Clarence Thomas-Anita Hill clash in 1988, and then Biden and other leftists during the impeachment of Bill Clinton 21 years ago, let's see how the Democrats were characterizing things back then.
What this is all about is the lynching of an uppity black man. If that is not stereotypical lynching of a black woman, what is?
History is going to question whether or not this was just a partisan lynching.
And indeed, it is a political lynching.
Political lynch mob.
I will not vote for this lynching.
Whoops, hypocrisy alert. We used lynching, but Trump's not allowed. Meanwhile, the NBA continues to reel under the weight of horrendous publicity about throwing the Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey under the bus for supporting the freedom protesters in Hong Kong. Last week, superstar LeBron James sought to silence Morey, warning him not to speak ill of the NBA's Chinese overlords. But this week, retired superstar Shaquille O'Neal said LeBron was wrong.
We as American people, we do a lot of business in China, and they know and understand our values, and we understand their values. And one of our best values here in America is free speech. We're allowed to say what we want to say, and we're allowed to speak up about injustices, and that's just how it goes. And if people don't understand that, that's something that they have to deal with. Daryl Morey was right. Whenever you see something wrong going on anywhere in the world, you should have the right to say, that's not right, and that's what he did.
Now we'll see whether the NBA commissioner tries to shut down Shaq. We close with the kind of statement that once would have shocked the nation's sensibilities, but now gets shrugged off because Trump-deranged leftists in the media and politics have said things like it so often. But stop for a moment and consider how incendiary this remark is by a man who wants to be president of the United States, Beto O'Rourke.
President Trump, perhaps inspired by Goebbels and the propagandists of the Third Reich, seemed to employ this tactic that the bigger the lie, the more obscene the injustice, the more dizzying the pace of this bizarre behavior, the less likely we are to be able to do something about it.
Trump as Joseph Goebbels, the notorious Nazi. Apparently they've tired of calling Trump Hitler, so now they've moved one notch down the list of reviled Nazis. That is your Democratic Party 2019.